How's it going, everyone? I just wanted to talk really quickly about Romans 13. Romans 13 is a chapter in the Bible that talks about the way Christians are supposed to submit to their governing authorities, to submit to the rulers of our time, to law enforcement. And so this last year, it's been a pretty heavily used chapter talking about like how as Christians we're supposed to respond to like the COVID mask mandates, to like the uh, the suppression of the church, not allowing people to gather, and other things like that. so so yeah, because like basically what the argument was for people who agreed with like mask mandates or which I wore a mask for a while. Just I mean I wasn't always against the mask mandates, but anyways, yeah, the argument basically went like, well, we're going to trust the government because they're set in place, they're appointed by God to protect us, and they're like not allowing us to gather because they're trying to protect us. And if we gather and we break that law that they made and we continue to meet, then essentially we're breaking the law, and we're also disobeying Romans 13 when it tells us to follow our government's law. But I've been thinking a fair amount about this and have come up with the conclusion that in order to obey Romans 13, we have to both look at the laws that the government puts in place, both local and federal, state and federal government puts in place for things like this, and weigh them against what our nation's higher laws are, like the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. So if we're really like honestly evaluating how we would apply Romans 13 to something like not allowing to gather at church, or mask mandates, or whatever else it might be, forcing people who are unvaccinated into separate areas, just things that it doesn't really feel like the America we all know, right? And so we have to use our judgment and determine whether or not the government is acting in our best interest as citizens of the United States of America. And if they're not, then the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, including the First and Second Amendments, actually they don't just say we have the right to stand up and speak out, or but also the duty. It's our duties as Americans, and I think it's our duties as Christians, especially like when thinking of like so when somebody says like, oh, you shouldn't be getting involved with politics, or you shouldn't be really talking about these things, or I would just point out like, well, if you're saying that from a Romans 13 perspective, America was designed to, I mean, I don't know if they designed these laws thinking about Romans 13, but it adheres to that principle. Just saying that Romans 13 was, excuse me, the Constitution and the Declaration were designed in order to put America in a tough position if it was ever under the threat of tyranny or authoritarianism, and the citizens of the United States would have to essentially stand up for their rights, or else they would be America could be overthrown, and America would be overthrown as soon as we did away with the founding principles of our nation, and the even higher laws of God. Like, let's say a couple years down the road, even though they're kind of already suppressing freedom of speech now, but let's say in a couple of years they make it illegal to own a Bible, or make it illegal to preach the gospel in public. What do we do then? Do we just say, oh, well, the government says that we have to do this, so we just have to obey Romans 13 and bow down before our government? No, because if we look at Acts, we see the governing forces at that time, forcing the apostles to stop preaching, and they would, be thrown into prison. And as soon as they left prison, they would start preaching again, because they realized, obviously they respect the government, and they know the Romans 13 principle, but they also realized that God had commanded them and called them to preach the gospel to the ends of the earth, and so they recognized that that was the higher law than whatever edict was going on at the time. And then if you look at Daniel, did Daniel and Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, did they obey every edict that the governing forces of their time, Nebuchadnezzar, or I'm not going to remember the name of the Persian king, but they would implement laws that would forbid these men to pray or force them to bow down to an idol, and they said, no, we can't do that because that disobeys the law that God gave us. So they rejected those edicts. And in America, I'm not saying to just disobey whatever this administration does just because it says it, but there's no legal precedent for legislating an article of clothing being worn on your face. And so when people start tyrannizing you and forcing you to wear a mask because of a illness that's going around, and saying you can't show the bottom half of your face, that goes against our founding principles. That is totally unconstitutional. So is restricting churches and religious gatherings and not allowing people to gather. That is unconstitutional. So is censoring the media. So is censoring people's freedom of speech using the power of big government or big tech and the state to censor people who have dissenting opinions. Those are all contradicting the higher laws of our nation, and I believe the higher laws of God that endow us with value and dignity. And as human beings, we need to stand up for our dignity, and as Christians, we need to stand up for the faith. No matter what people tell us on social media, no matter how many followers you lose, or how many people curse you, because Jesus says, blessed are you when you are cursed and persecuted for my name's sake. So yeah, those are my thoughts on how we as Christians apply Romans 13 to the world around us. And Christians who say that Romans 13 is just we have to obey Romans 13, and so everything that the government says or does, or using Romans 13 as kind of an excuse to conform to the pattern of the world. Those are vague assumptions, and they just don't make any sense, and I think they're unbiblical, ungodly. So I think that's a beautiful and liberating thing for Christians to recognize, hey, even if we go out and preach, or even if we are open about our faith, or we refuse to wear masks, or we refuse to get vaccinated. I actually did get vaccinated, but some people might not like that, but yeah, so anyways, I'm going to probably talk about that in another video, my thoughts on vaccinations. But yeah, if people are I'm not going to wear a mask, or I'm going to stand up for the faith, and people are shouting them down, as Christians, we can rest assured that we are doing the right thing, even when our opinions are unpopular, even when people don't like that we're not going along with the little narrative that they got going there. So anyways, hope this video blessed somebody. I'm going to keep it short, and hope that helps you. Sorry I didn't read Romans 13, but you get the picture of Romans 13, and I think you sum it up pretty well when you say Romans 13 is talking about the call for the Christian to be obedient to and to respect the governing forces of the time. And so that's all. I think that's all I have for you now. God bless.